Welcome to Victoria. I know everyone is really thrilled to have you here. I'm particularly pleased to be able to ask you a few questions. This whole weekend I've spent interviewing film directors and actors and producers for groups of film students. And one of the things that we've been telling these people is that you have to persevere. You can never give up. If you want something bad enough, if you're patient enough, it will happen for you. And it made me think of a story that I've always wanted to ask you just to see whether it's true or not. And there's a lot of those, but this one is one I can tell in front of a large group of people. You were an aspiring, you Rhodes Scholar, done with your time in the service. You're sweeping floors at a studio in Nashville. Same studio that Bob Dylan recorded Blonde on Blonde in. But you're too shy to talk to him. You can fill in. I'm not going to fill in all the details. But you were trying to get your songs out. You were writing songs. You're trying to get them out, and nobody much would take them. So I'd heard that you got a helicopter somewhere, flew it to Johnny Cash's house, landed on the front yard, got his attention when he came out of the house, and said, "Now that I have your attention, here are my songs." And it's
semi-true.
It's semi-true? Okay.
I knew John for 3 years as his janitor at the recording studio, and I had pitched him every song I ever wrote, but he'd never cut one. and it was not the song that John thought it was that I landed in the helicopter. In fact, John wasn't even there.
Really?
I would never have contradicted him. He was my and is my hero. So.
Well, talking about Johnny Cash, I was lucky enough to go to a tribute concert in Nashville at the Grand Ole Opry about 10 years ago, and it was a tribute concert for Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings. And I somehow wrangled a backstage pass, and I watched the show sitting with Johnny Cash. And he was ill at the time, and people didn't think that he would perform, and that maybe he wasn't going to live that much longer. And you came up and sang Sunday Morning Coming Down, and you got him up to perform. You were the only person of everyone that performed that day that he sang with. And it was so moving because we didn't think that we would see him perform again. And then to hear him sing this song and to hear him sing it with you was an unbelievable moment. And I guess it's sort of emblematic of the relationship that you had with him, that you could press him into doing something like that when no one thought that he would ever sing in front of people.
I didn't press him into doing it. Nobody ever pressed him. He was always... He remains larger than life to me. He was, Willie and I are outlaws of our own making, but John's always been up there, and he came up on his own that night and sang with me.
Yeah.
It was I didn't want to make him work.
Well, it was a great moment.
It was a great moment when he cut that song.
Yeah. Tell me about that. Yeah, because that was the beginning of it all for you.
At the beginning, John had a very powerful television show at the time. Mm-hmm. It was the first time that artists like James Taylor and Joni Mitchell and were coming down and being on a country TV program.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Well, unfortunately, I got a bad voice too.
Yeah, we'll get these turned up.
But what was I talking about?
Johnny Cash, the television show Johnny Country.
Yeah, John was going to do Sunday Morning Coming Down on his television show, and they didn't want him to say, "Wishing Lord that I was stoned." And I sat there and listened to it. They had finally come up with a compromise. They said, "Can you say, wishing I was home?" and I didn't say anything, because I'd have done anything that John wanted me to do. And he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, it doesn't mean the same thing." But I figured they were going to make him do that. And so he got out there what turned out to be the record was a live recording of that television performance where he got to that word and he looked up at me in the back and he said, "Wishing, Lord, that I was stoned."
Now, was that what you liked about Johnny Cash? I mean, obviously beyond the great talent and that, but that he was someone who did things his own way and didn't allow anyone to tell him what to do. Was that the thing that drew you to him?
I'm sure that was part of it.
Yeah.
But he was always larger than life.
Yeah.
He was. One of the best things about my life is that my heroes have turned out to be close friends, and he did as well. But he was never just like one of the guys. Johnny Cash was like something off of Mount Rushmore to me, and he still is. He still is.